Shelley, we are back for episode 7 of the Small Moments Big Impact podcast. How are you?
Woo! Well, I'm good, Kiwi. How are you?
Good. We were talking offline before, and I said I feel like we've had our week off of footy finals, like for our pod, because we're just coming off a few weeks break. We've had our week off. We've earned the right. We're finishing at the top of the ladder. We get our week off, and then we come back refreshed, ready to go.
I love it. Look, we had such a great win against the Saints on Thursday. In my house, you would have thought it was grand final at 10 p.m. The whole house, we were all up dancing and in front of the TV. And, it really brings home to, it doesn't matter that it's not the grand final. We had a great win and it was the last game for us for the season. So we really had to celebrate it. So I might need a week off just to recover from that.
Well, if only both of our teams had the actual week off in the finals, we'd both be. I'd take the wildcard round. I don't really care. I boldly predicted that the Tigers would finish in the wildcard round at the start of the year, and how wrong I was. But that's a long conversation for another day. So, but the AFLW season is sort of really getting into the swing of things now.
Yes.
So here you go. This weekend we're going to the Suns game this weekend on the
really?
coast because little Harvey's playing at halftime in Auskick.
Aww. Amazing.
Which would be cool. I tried to get Eloise on as well. I asked the question, but she's not doing the Super Kick program at school. So unfortunately, paperwork and insurance reasons got in the way of that. But Harvey's going to be playing at halftime at the Suns this week, which sort of dovetails into like the more experiences like that, the better. Like it's so good for them to chuck them in those sorts of things. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. When I went with Liam out on the field, it was just something so incredibly special. You can see why players love to play. You can see that a part of the game is the skill. They get to go out there and be with their mates, but the other part is that atmosphere and having the privilege to demonstrate your skill set and be a part of something so much greater and bigger. It's really great. I reckon Harvey's going to have a ball.
It should have good fun. So that'll be the AFLW, and then which is probably a good little segue as well. We were talking offline before. It's been a big week for footy, AFL men's, AFL women's, and so on. A lot happening. And you mentioned you want to have a bit of a chat about it, which I think it's good to talk openly and publicly to talk about these sorts of things. Where did you want to start?
I just think it's important to highlight in general. I always talk about the word safety with you. And you've always made me feel that way through like your behavior. You've never once really verbally said that, but you've always been very respectful to any females around you. Your parents have raised you so incredibly well and it really shines through. And I guess it's important to, first of all, thank amazing men in our lives that are that way, because I don't know how common that is. And the other one is to really highlight how different it is for women than it is for men, how we experience things so different. And I think it just raises the conversation of, I watched a podcast and the man on the podcast very much is, he's got sisters, he's got daughters, he's got a wife. And he was saying on his podcast, the disrespect doesn't just start when you physically touch a female, when you're not welcome to touch her. It starts by sharing photos. It starts by sharing conversation, by name calling or degrading and things like that. And I just thought it was an important opportunity to have that conversation, just to share a little bit more of what it's like for us. Like I use the example for you, like if you were to go to the gym early morning, late night, what's your thought process in that? When I leave LGO, like I was saying to you before, I make sure I fill up my water bottle is completely full to the top. So it's really, really heavy. Should I have to use it to keep myself safe? I have to make sure my key's accessible. I have to make sure I'm really quick from A to B. And it's literally like a 30-minute process to get myself to feel safe enough to get myself out. And I notice it with all the girls. So we try to buddy as much as we can. But I just think the more conversations we have, the more incredible people in our lives, like, yourself and people in your group that listen and outside of us, will take it on board and understand how it can actually land for the other person.
Yeah, there's some really good points. And from my perspective, like I feel like we've come a long way, but it's only so small on the journey of how far we need to go as men in the community. And you bring up the good example about the gym or leaving work late at night. I once heard it paraphrased into the story of like, it's like a car and a motorcyclist going down the road, both on the same road, both got the same rules, but the risk for the motorcyclist is much, much, much higher of how things can go wrong. And for people that are quick and easy, like to dismiss concerns like you've raised and not take it as seriously, that's a real sort of simple analogy of like looking at it like it's so much, the risk is so much higher, and we have the responsibility as men to lead that charge where women don't have to deal with that sort of, risk and fear in their lives, because it's not fair. Like, I can get up and go for a run basically any time of the day or night that I like, but would I send my daughter out like that? No. Like, there's so many certain, and that's shit house, to be honest. Like, it shouldn't have to be that way. But I say, like, we've come a long way. But like, the sad news is, from my experience over like decades, Lily, there's so far to go.
Yeah.
There's so far to go, and it feels very foreign to me to hear sometimes. Well, like when I hear comments and attitudes, there's so far to go, and there's lots of great work going on at schools and homes, and we're chipping away at it. But there's a long way to go where not all men, clearly, but like the culture in a lot of groups needs to change drastically.
And look, I grew up with lots of boy cousins, and the thing is, if they were ever cheeky, which they were, as we were growing up, they were kind of finding their ways. My aunties would step in straight away and be like, I almost heard that. Don't talk like that. If you have that to say, then you are just trying to big note yourself, and you're doing it at somebody else's expense that's not here to defend themselves. And, for a long time, I thought that was really normal. And then I came out in, school and all those things, and saw the way, like even back then, the girls were treated in comparison, let's say, to the boys, and the comments that were made to us and the name callings and all that kind of stuff. Compared to boys, it was just, and then you think, oh, that's high school, leave that behind. And then you come into a workforce. And then again, I worked for Westtrack. I talk about that a lot. And I was very fortunate to have very great experiences there with a lot of, it's male dominated. It's a male dominated industry. And I had a really great experience there with basically every single manager that I had. They were so incredibly respectful, and they were very much there for the apprentices as well. If conversations like that would occur or comments were made, they were the ones to step in. And I guess the point of raising the conversation is hopefully to help everybody know that we're all responsible to a degree to kind of step in and go, oh, do we really need to say that? Is that appropriate? Like, if that was your sister, if that was your child, would a comment like that land? And then to start that conversation from, and I feel like if it happens everywhere, it's normalized, right?
Yep.
Only happens in one place, and then you go outside of that place and it's like, oh, my mum, like if it only happens at home, my kids be like, oh, my mum, she's just over the top. But if it starts happening everywhere, then these young impressionable people that are now coming up, growing into their journey and lifespan, they're then able to turn around and go, oh, this is appropriate everywhere. I should be using this language everywhere, and things like that. How, like for you, I'm curious generally to know, like for you being in the footy world as an umpire and things like that, you would have seen some things, right? I can imagine. And you're so different because, your upbringing and your sister and stuff. So how do you then separate one from the other?
I do my best to lead by example as much of the time as possible, whether that as at home or whatever groups I'm in. Could I be doing more? Should I be doing more in certain situations and examples? Like, the answer is probably yes. And I've never been involved or seen anything that's a massive red flag or crossing the line to something serious. I've never been in that situation, but talking more from a general attitude, commentary point of view. I don't engage. I get out of there. You pull people up where you can. Leading by example is one thing, but we also, it's an uphill battle in the social media aspect from what, like, the manosphere that gets those sorts of things that get pushed on young men. And so the importance of starting really young in primary school with education and awareness and a big part of it, not all of it clearly, but a big part of it I think comes back to self-esteem. If you
Mhm.
are centered in yourself and are comfortable in yourself, there's no need to punch down or to have those sort of attitudes. Like, I think a lot of it comes from like in the male, back and forth, from
Mhm.
trying to one up each other
Mhm.
and not having a sense of self where like I just don't see the point in engaging in that. I don't feel the need to like, but yeah, there's a lot of one upping each other in that sort of space, and we've got a long way to go still.
Mhm.
Uh, but this week's been to look at like a positive out of the last week or so with what's gone on in the AFL. The response has
Mhm.
been absolutely massive, and that's super important. The players were stood down. There's still a lot more to
Yeah.
unfold, but you look at how serious the club and the community's taken it and how much
Mm.
coverage it's got. That shows that we are on the way. Still a long way to go, but how much the world's come down on top of them to date, and there will be more to come.
Yeah.
Um, but it has been a positive to see how much of a line in the sand has been drawn.
And I love the fact that there was instant impact from them, because we know it's still under investigation. We know police are still doing their thing, and it sounds quite complex. It sounds like there's quite a lot of moving parts that they need to really figure out how they've aligned within the timeline and things like that. But instead of saying, look, we're going to let them play because the investigation's pending, the AFL stepped in straight away. The Sydney Summons stepped in straight away and were like, no, they're being stood down and they're not even an option for selection because we're here. And I
Mm,
think I saw their win, and I'm not a Sydney Swan supporter. Sorry, guys. Never have been. It's just they're the wrong colour for me in all of my sports. But I just thought it was beautiful to see their emotion. They really came together. You could see they were really hurt by whatever is going on within their club at the moment, and the way that the people came out for the Sydney Swans Women's Club. They had, I think, a record-breaking
they
16,000.
did. Mm,
And that just makes me love humankind, and it just makes me continuously have faith that we're on the right track. And those are the actions, because I'm so much about action more than words. And those are the actions I think that really back people saying, we want to do better. We want things to be better for women. Because, like, I would love to get up and go for a run first thing in the morning out in the fresh air. I would love that so much, but I don't feel safe. And I don't feel safe because I've been in situations where cars have followed. I've been in situations where I've even been egged. Remember one morning a few years back, I was running up and down Arundel Drive, and it was 4 kids in a car throwing eggs.
mm,
Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So you kind of sit there and go, to see that amount of people coming out, they're slowly shifting that, because then maybe when my girls are old enough, they're going to have the option to run wherever they want. They're not going to have to
mm.
be inside on a treadmill. Um, and I just really wanted to talk about that today, even though I know we are strapped for time and things like that, to really go in depth, but just to touch on it, to start the conversations, and I suppose to make sure there's also a little bit of empathy for us, that we are on that motorcycle. We don't have the protection like the car, yet the car is almost the biggest threat to us
Mm-hmm.
on that road.
Mm-hmm.
So, before a comment is made or things like that, to maybe put that thought process in your mind to kind of go, wow, I'm equivalent to a car here next to a
Mm.
motorcycle. What am I going to do with that?
Well, before we get to our guests, like I think the message I'd like to send is to all men is to think about how would you feel about somebody talking about or acting towards your sister or your mother or your daughter or your auntie the same way that you're acting or behaving,
Yeah.
and to be better and to be the example to lead by example of how you would expect people to treat the women in your life, and even down to little things. Not that I run a lot these days, but like I know if I'm out running, well, whenever it is, if I'm coming up behind or in front of a woman running, I'll often cross the road and just
Mm-hmm.
run on the other. They don't need me sneaking up behind them if they've got their headphones on. And next minute, I'll just
Yeah.
go the long way around to try and alleviate some of the whatever fear that might be there. And that's just a very small example, but I'd encourage all men to think about how you would feel being there while someone's saying that or doing that to an important woman in your life.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really well said.
Thank you. So we've got an amazing guest who's got some experience in this space working in corrective services.
Uh-huh.
How do you know Shelley, Lily?
So I met Shelley initially at a finalist, I think it was like a drinks celebration for Gold Coast Women in Business that the incredible lady Karen Phillips runs. And we met there, and it was Karen that introduced us. And she was like, I think you two will have lots to talk about. And then I've just continued to see her at events. I really wanted to go and support her ball this year, but missed out on tickets because I just, complacent, forgot, had so many other things going on. I thought I'd actually purchased them, but I hadn't finished the actual checkout part. So I had them in the cart. Because I really wanted to go and support her with the incredible things she does with her foundation. And we met through that initial awards and then continued to build our, I suppose, professional friendship through different events and things like that. And I think she's such a phenomenal woman. And I was so excited when she said she'd come and be on the pod with us. So I'm really excited for the pod ahead.
All right, let's have a chat with Shelley.
Welcome, Shelley.
So, small moments, big impactors, if that's a name for our audience. Lily, we've got an amazing guest today. I've got quite the bio to read off, so bear with me. Today, we're privileged to have Shelley join us on the Small Moments, Big Impact podcast. Shelley's extensive experience in psychology includes Queensland Corrective Services, working with high-risk inmates, Queensland Health in the Acute Young Adult Ward, Robina Hospital, and at the Acquired Brain Injury Rehabilitation Unit on the Gold Coast Hospital, and in more recent times, starting her own practice, assisting clients with many different mental health conditions, including ASD and intellectual disabilities, with a particular focus on the NDIS, which allowed many clients to access funding to improve their lives immensely. Shelley's awareness of the support NDIS was able to offer clients and the enormous benefits it could bring to their lives led her to create Magnus Health, a business where she could, along with a great team, significantly improve the lives of people living with a disability. Today, Magnus is a team of approximately 180 incredible people supporting participants across 19 independent living homes and communities throughout Southeast Queensland, and their work centres on their theme of freedom through support. Please welcome the amazing Shelley Jacks.
Welcome, Shelley. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm very excited.
Oh, we're so excited to have you on. And I think what a lot of people don't understand unless they're in our space, how crucial it is to what you and your team do to somebody like me and what our team does. So we kind of are in the same bubble, but we need you guys so much to extend the level of support that we can offer to our children, our youth, and our adults that we support. Can you give us a little bit more of an overview from your point of view on how all of that came about? I mean, every time I see you, I always pick your brain about stuff because you're just so knowledgeable and you're so kind and generous with your time and your knowledge. But just for the people listening, if you can give a bit of an overview of that impact within our community of everything you do.
Yeah. So Magnus Health came about in 2019. So I'd been working, I'd leaked out of the government space and begun to work in my own private practice. And I had some experience writing reports for people, getting them on the NDIS at the time, especially people with complex mental health conditions. So things like schizophrenia, and then that might go alongside with an intellectual disability or something like that. So things people had a lot of complex needs, and being able to write a report that the NDIS could see that they needed the support that they eventually got. So we had some good success with that. And then I met someone who said to me, you should start doing SIL support. And I was like, oh, what's that? And so she told me what it was. So it's supported independent living, and it's 24-hour support for people with like complex mental health conditions or disabilities of some description. And so I met with her for a coffee, and she mapped out what does it look like, and how might I go about doing that. So she wrote out a piece of paper for me and mapped it all out, and I've still got that piece of paper actually. Oh. And I went home and thought about it and told my husband, I'm thinking about doing this thing, and explained what it is. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. And so, yeah, went ahead and just sat down and named a business Magnus. Magnus actually means great in Latin. So I was looking for something that wasn't just your normal kind of care this or, and started to look at how we might do that. And the reason I kind of took up that challenge is because I thought that woman was right. Like, with our background or my background experience and the people that I knew, I thought we could actually do a fabulous job at providing the support that people need, because we understand clinically what's happening. We also understand systems. So we understand Queensland Health. We understood corrections. Like there's a lot of private practice. Like, we understood all those things. So I thought that we could be pretty fabulous in that space. And turns out we've been not too bad, it seems.
You've been phenomenal. And just from the transition that you had across, I always wonder how many people that you have had to write reports on in the system when you were working for the government, had they had the right supports, the right diagnosis much earlier in life, how much of an impact do you think that may have had on them going into adulthood and maybe the decisions that they made along the way?
I think it's always helpful to understand yourself better in whatever context that is, right? So, like, for some people, early diagnosis would have been absolutely key. Lots of people that we support have had a diagnosis that's appeared in their sort of teens. So people with, say, schizophrenia, they generally speaking those things seem to come to the fore in their early teens. There seems to be problems and things going on, and can take a while for that diagnosis to be made. And if they get treatment early, it can actually transform their outcomes later on. But often people don't, for whatever reason. It's not available, or they don't meet the right person who says this is what you need to go do next, or we find this really helpful, or they don't know how to describe what's going on for them. They don't have the right support system in place, just generally at home or something like that. So,
Shelley, on that, to jump into some of your early career work in Queensland Corrective Services, what sort of learnings or insights could you share, whether it be like a lack of diagnosis or a lack of family support, or even just like environment at home? Like, how much does that contribute to issues and challenges a bit later on once they end up in the jail system?
It's massive. It's a massive impact. So when I was at Barallan Correctional Centre for a while. I was there for 6 months, and I was doing transitional assessment. And so what that meant was there's people in the prison who were trying to get out of the prison, get parole, whatever. And so I would do an assessment of them and how they got to where they are today, and then what they need in the community. And I could almost guarantee that I would be able to map people's trajectory by the time they first started talking. So I think I assessed around 250 people in that 6-month period. So it was a quick assessment of just their needs, really. But yeah, you could see, childhood trauma for people, what that led to, maybe early drug use, lack of family support, potentially lack of intervention as a young person. And then there's people. So those are people that maybe don't necessarily even have like a disability, or and then there's other people who've had like cognitive disabilities that maybe were never picked up when they were young, left to kind of wander around their classroom, just put in a corner. No one really intervened for them, and then how that led to, their low self-esteem and how they ended up coping with life, just moving forward. So you could see the trajectory definitely of people and how they ended up, to where they were today. I used to sit in front of I remember once sitting in front of a young guy and just being like, I don't know, just thinking how heartbreaking it would be to be this young fellow's mum, and think about what could have been for him and what, his potentially now, just through whatever the actions are that he took at the time. What they'd led to, and how many things have potentially then been ruined by him now having custodial sentence and all of that stuff. Yeah.
One of the big things, one of our OTs, he was doing placement within the government system, and it was in the mental health space. And he asked the supervisor there, who'd been there for 10 years, we're seeing the same people, we're seeing patterns. So do we know, like, do they have a diagnosis? Can we like refer them to external services outside of us? And the supervisor was like, well, I don't really know if they have a diagnosis. Just have them here for 4 days, cycle them out, and then I'm sure they'll be back. So when he came back to our clinic, he was shocked because we're very pro-diagnosis, Shelley, at LGO, because we feel like when you know which road you got to head down, you know that the supports are there.
Yeah.
So, whereas if you don't really have a diagnosis, I say it's like street signs. It's like driving to a destination and having street signs to understand how to get to your destination. And when you don't have that, you're going aimlessly in circles and eventually you give up. And then you start to become destructive because what's the alternative, right? So, and he was really shocked by that because this is somebody that had been in this system for this area for 10 years. And the people were the same people constantly cycling through, because obviously the 4 days that they had in the mental health ward was great, but then they'd go back in the community and they didn't have the skills, tools, or understanding of what was happening to them or how they were functioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be able to make choices.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a Queensland Corrective Services tender still, and do some like assessments for parole board and assessments for high intensity sex offenders mainly. That was my background. That's what I did. So I still do some of that sometimes. But when I was traveling regularly, just before Magnus was born, I was traveling regularly up to Rockhampton actually. And I would see a lot of guys there, and in my mind, like when I started talking to them, they had what we call a CI flag, like a cognitive impairment flag on their file, right? But lots and lots of people do. Lots of people in corrections have that. But they had never had any kind of proper assessment. So so I would do a WACE, which is a cognitive assessment of that person. So initially I was just assessing everybody, because I was like, let's just figure out where this person's at, because it's very hard for me to help them to not do the things they're doing if I don't understand what they understand.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out how much of what I'm saying is like gobbledygook, or how much is something that they can comprehend potentially. So then did lots of assessments of people, finding out lots of people had like cognitive disabilities, and needed a different kind of support in order to get what they needed to get in order to stay out of the correctional system. So definitely the diagnosis in that sense is very, very helpful.
Shelley, you do see a lot of quick fixes promoted and just basic 1 + 1 = 2. If we do X, we'll get Y. But it sounds like it's a very complex area.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything is like way more complex than people imagine it is. And people want it to be simple. When we used to sit in a group with guys, I would say it's never just one thing, like if it could just be one thing, we just fix that thing, right? And then everyone would be great and we'd all move on. But it's always a lot of different things. So people are always looking for the why. Why did I do this? Why have I ended up here? But the why is, sometimes you might never know the exact why as well. So sometimes the question about the why is not that helpful. Like, it's good to have some ideas, but you're never going to be able to pinpoint it's specifically this. So we got to fix it, and try and manage and, impact a lot of different areas in hopes that will be the thing that gets you to the next stage, I think.
Well, let's change pace then. Tell us, let's get on to Magnus and you.
Yeah.
Obviously, tell us like the early beginnings, how it came to be, and then obviously the transition going from your own small practice into the organisation that it is today. Take us through that journey.
So for the first year, so 2019, registered the company, and then had some really great support with people at getting us our first client. So our first participant that we supported was a woman that required 24/7 support. She had a diagnosis of schizophrenia and intellectual disability in her own home. So the first thing I did then was help me figure out what is the care plan, how do we support this person, to get all the information. And then I had to hire people. And I'd never hired people before. So I'm like at a coffee shop hiring people. just check, doing the things that I thought would, I just wanted to run a company that I wanted to work in, basically. So, I would hire the people that I would want to support me. One of my questions is always, would I want to spend 24 hours with this person?
Oh, that's
It doesn't matter how many quals they have or how many good answers they've got. If they're annoying me, within 15 minutes, I don't want to hire them. that was how I was doing it at the time. So it's probably not, very PC, but that was what I would do. And so while we were doing that, and we started supporting this wonderful lady. She was great. She was just so great. And then I was also working. So I was also still doing my other job as well. So I was flying to Rockhampton. I was doing reports. So we're doing this alongside. So I'd be flying in from Rocky at, 7:30 at night, looking at the payroll, going, that doesn't look right. But I'm not I'm not the payroll person. I just had to find someone who said to me, they know how to do payroll. So just trying to figure out how all of those different things, because running a small business, as in like you're a sole trader, is very different from then hiring a whole heap of people, having like a process of how we do that. And then obviously as we grew, we had to do, we had to have like a house manager, or we had to have somebody in the office sometimes doing things. And it was kind of like cells dividing, So when you work for government, it's always like, this is your position and this is your position description and this is what you've got to go do. Whereas this was like, oh, this is your position today, and now next week your position is different and we want you to go over here and do these things. Yeah. And so it's kind of morphed into what it is today, which is we've just hired a CEO. Her name's Alison Wick. She's amazing. So she's the top of the tree. And then we have a managerial level of HR, ops manager and service delivery. And then we have coordinators in the office, 4 coordinators who all have degrees, and they're all very good at what they do, rostering, administrative support, accounts, like all of that. And then our amazing field workers who are all the support workers and the house coordinators.
What an incredible achievement, Shelley, when you think of the small moment of your friend sitting there and drawing a diagram for you, going, hey, I reckon you would be so good at this. This is what it would like to take it and to grow it to what you have. That is so hard to do, yet so incredibly phenomenal, and credit to you. That just goes to show your love for people, which is one of the things I did say to you when I first met you, what shone through really for me, and just your love for people. I could tell the way you were interacting with your peers around you, with your friends, your colleagues. And I think that it's transcended beautifully. And even the HR stuff, I completely agree. And that also shows your love for people. I'm the same. And sometimes the people in my office get really upset with me because I won't hire. Because they'll be like, they tick all the boxes. I'm like, yeah, I know, but the personality doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. And we've had a few situations along the way where we've hired people almost to prove a point. And then they've kind of gone to me, oh, I get it now. Okay. Because I wanted them to feel like they have a say, but at the same time, what works. And I love that. That's so.
Yeah. It was really interesting, actually, that woman that told me, you'd be great at this, because she'd come across lots of different people. She was working in the NDIS. She said to me after I started Magnus Health, she's like, do you know, I told like 4 people that they should and could go and do this. And you're the only person that actually did it. Which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because lots of people can do things. They just
massive sliding doors moment. Like some things, a lot of things aren't given to you. You've got to go out and take them, so to speak. You've got to show the commitment, the action to go and do it. And then if I can open the door for you in this one, not only have you built this massive, incredible, amazing business helping people through like the Magnus balls and like giving back, is it like something like $500,000 that you've raised?
Yeah. So we've raised $455,000 for charities over the last 3 years.
Incredible.
With the Magnus Ball and the Carers Foundation. I did the Unsung Hero, CEO singing competition last year.
And I heard you did really well. Shelley was really concerned how she went, but I heard you were magnificent and you had...
I was magnificent.
I heard you were really good.
I had a great time. It was really fun. It's really fun. I really liked it. Like, everyone wants to be a rock star every now and again, so I'm just going to pretend I am, and then people might buy it while I'm there.
Well, they definitely bought it. And where do you think your passion and drive for people and helping people and building pathways comes from? If you kind of had to look back into inwards and kind of go, where does this start from me? What do you think that would be?
I would say my childhood. So my mum and my dad were always very looking towards helping people. You know, they would never ever walk past someone in the street that needed a hand with something. Always thinking about what other people need, and always having that empathy and understanding for other people. Yeah. So my mum died 3 months ago nearly now. So it's been,
sorry to hear.
So sorry,
yeah.
Shelley.
So it's really like, I mean, as awful as you can imagine. It's like the worst thing has happened. That you know, the worst thing that could happen has happened. And I know that's, look, you know, everyone goes through something like this. But she was the person that, you know, taught. She would always say, "You can do anything," you know, and I'd be like, "Oh, sure I can." You know, as a teenager, you're like, "Yeah, whatever. I can't do anything. She's just my mum. She's just saying that." But she was the person that would always kind of. I don't know, look towards how do you help others? How do you how do you give? Well, even when you've got nothing to give, how do you give that? Yeah.
What about, Shelley, one area that I think is a challenge for every business owner, particularly those that are in business or organization that's focused on helping people, and you want to give so much of yourself and dedicate that to your team and the people and clients and so on. But the flip side is that can quickly take a big hold on your personal life.
Yeah.
How do you manage that on a day-to-day basis?
I think you have to have great boundaries around what you are willing to do and not do, and what's my responsibility versus your responsibility. So as a psychologist, I've never gone in to rescue anybody. I always believe that people can do the things for themselves. And so trying to empower people to do that is always been my goal, particularly because I know people can do all sorts of awesome things, right? So even with staff, with clients, with whoever, with family, it's your job to do that part. My job is to be here, support you. I'll do whatever I can in my area, but it's really your job. So that then reduces, I think, the likelihood of that burnout, because I think one of the things that people think that they should be doing is running around and rescuing everybody from themselves, their own decisions. But really, that's not your job. That's their job.
That's so true. And it's really their journey in a way to learn also their ability and skill set of making decisions when they're left to their devices to make them.
Yeah. Well, and if you're the person that is always doing the things for someone, I don't know, they're never going to feel confident in their own ability to do it. So you're kind of taking something away from a person if you are always.
Shelley, I've got a saying is that, like, sometimes you've got to let little things break.
Yeah.
For people, and that it could be like whatever, but just like, don't drop any big balls. If someone genuinely needs help, go and help. But sometimes, like, to prove a point almost where you're going to set boundaries, you need to let little things break and then move forward from there.
Yeah. And it's hard to do. It's easier to do it's easier to do at work and than it is to do at home. You know, like thinking about your kids and that's a lot harder. The closer you are, the harder it is, I think. But yeah, it's a good to have your own boundaries around. Well, I don't know, and you want to go and do your own things too. So you can't get your own stuff done if you're forever looking after people. So yeah.
It's so true. And just to circle back, I think this week's been very big in the media around like female safety and all that kind of stuff, without going into details and getting in trouble for anything.
No.
But I think it's so good to have you on, because you've been in the system profiling and doing reports for people around, sexual offending. I'm not saying anyone's done anything. I'm just saying the conversation has been brought up, and it's a really great one to have, especially for us women. Because I think if I was to ask you, QE, if I give you a scenario, say you finished work, you're at the office, and you're driving home or you're going to the gym, because I notice sometimes you go gym on like stories, it's like 3 a.m., right? So
Well,
when you
maybe not, but let's keep
maybe not,
going.
but it's like late night, right? I'm sure
Earlier
maybe
late. Go on.
maybe I was
Yeah.
looking at 3 a.m. Maybe that's what it is. But you were late at night going to the gym. So when you're getting out of your car, what is your thought process of getting yourself from the car to the door and inside? What do you think about?
If I'm late at night or early in the morning, if it's dark, essentially, I have a very, what's the word? I have an amazing mum. I was brought up by a very protective mum as well. So it's sort of been built into me that look
She's
out for
built it
danger
into
and
you,
so on. I
right?
think I'm a little, I know where you're going with this. And I think it's a little bit, yeah, I'm very aware. But even like I found myself thinking about this last night. It got to like 5:45 or something. And then Eloise, she's almost 12, goes, Dad, I want to go to the netball hoop at the park. I'm like, yep, cool. Hey, it's dark. We can go, but we've got to go right now. And we went there. We ended up staying till it went dark, essentially.
Yeah.
And I found myself there. There's no way would I let her or my wife or it's such a different environment for women and
Such a
all the
difficult
things
process.
to think about. Yeah, there's no way. So
Yeah, because even for me, when I'm leaving LGO and it's dark, I make sure I have a really big water bottle that's absolutely full of water. So if I need to bang someone over the head, it's going to have maximum impact. I make sure my keys are accessible. I make sure everything's packed away. Growing up in Austria, it was very you're very aware that you're unsafe. So it was kind of very inbuilt into me. And then with the stuff that's gone on, this week and been in the media, and then Shelley with you and your background, how do you walk away from some of those sessions that you would have had to have in order to do your job and be okay?
I think I have a pretty, I don't know, like I'm able to really see the good in people for the most part, which is, probably a bit, I think a lot of people can't conceive of what that might be like.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the only way then you can get good outcomes for people. You're not going to do that if you don't look for the good in people, and also being able to decompartmentalize. So as soon as when I was in the prison, I would leave the prison, I would just forget it. I wouldn't think about it until I went back there the next day. So just being able to do that. But we used to have, maybe I won't talk about that. I'm just censoring myself here. Just thinking about. So I also facilitated the men's domestic violence program at Southport Probation and Parole for 10 years, and that was an interesting process of trying to get the men in, because you're the only woman in the room, and maybe most of those men don't really like women that much. There's something going on there. So you've got to be really great at getting people on board in your corner, and then asking them, because we want them to challenge themselves about their beliefs and that kind of thing. So just being able to know, I think, that you're doing a good job has been enough for me, that I'm doing the bit that I can do, chipping away at some of those core beliefs or the things that have happened to people in the past, and hopes that makes the world a safer place in some way. That was always mine.
Shelley,
focus, really.
how does, to wrap like your experience across all facets, you got kids, yeah? You said before?
Yeah.
How does that shape you as a parent? What sort of things do you do differently or you make a focus on? Like you've got such an extensive career or a whole different sort of ranges. How does it shape you as a parent?
Yeah. Can I just say, firstly, my kids think I know nothing. Like,
They all do. They all do.
Like the same as everybody else. Like I'd be like, I did work in that for many, many years. And they were like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. So a couple of things are interesting to me. So just having treated high intensity sexual offending for a long, long time, what I know is that people are the most unsafe in their own homes. That to be one, right? So that actually the likelihood of something terrible happening to you in that regard, just say at the park or just being out and about, going for a walk or whatever, is probably very low compared to the risk that you're exposed to in your own house or in your in your family. So you're more likely to be offended against by a family member than anything else. So the kind of stranger danger idea is kind of pretty old hat when it comes. I mean, not that those things don't happen, but the likelihood, right? The risk level when we talk about the risk. So it's really for kids being able to have good self-esteem and assertive behavior and good boundaries themselves that's going to be the most protective thing that you can give a child in regards to keeping themselves safe, because it's really going to probably be, if they're going to be offended against, it's going to be someone they know and someone that has some sort of power over them in some way or some, so they've got to be able to assert themselves, and if something goes wrong, have someone to tell and be okay with saying those particular things. Yeah. So we all hope our kids would be that and do that. But like, I've got one kid and like, no one's going near that kid.
Yeah.
Like, God help them. And then others are just maybe not as assertive, or like too much a people pleaser, really wanting to do the right thing and not get in trouble and do all that. So, sort of that, trying to figure out the best balance of all of those things that's not an easy thing to do really for anybody really.
No, my mum struggled with it a lot. So my parents separated when I was 6, and then we came to Australia when I was 10. And we never had, I grew up with lots of boy cousins, but we always had, the aunties are always there, right? Because they're very traditional. So they're always cooking, cleaning, they're always kind of pottering around you. But my mum actually didn't have a partner until I was 16.
Yeah.
And even then, when they started dating, he lived an hour away, and she would say to him, if you want to come and see me, you can drive the hour and then you can drive home. I've got 2 girls in the house. You can't stay here.
Yeah.
Because we grew up in that environment in Austria where you knew you were very unsafe, and also coming from domestic violence myself, I had a really hard probably start to life the first 6 years, physically, mentally and emotionally, and she was just not having any of it. So I always thought that was normal. Right.
Yeah.
You come into like school. I remember one of my friends, her mum was a cop, and the stuff that was going on there was horrifically scary. And her mum was a cop, so you'd be like, she'd be so strict, she'd be this, but no, it was really crazy, and she went down the rabbit hole of drugs for a very long time. So then I could understand my mum, and I was like, okay, you do know something, because I was like,
it's always nothing. You look back, right, that we're like, oh, okay, yeah, you did know some things, maybe you were right. Yeah. But definitely, like that was probably a very good decision on your mum's behalf, because it just reduces the risk, right? Like, and not that you don't want people to have relationships and have a step parent in the house necessarily, because that's kind of what, like 50% of people are going to be divorced, and the majority of them probably going to repartner at some point. But just thinking about like, how do you create boundaries and how do you assess the person that's coming into your house and going to be and your kids are going to be exposed to that person, and how do we assess whether that is the right person or not,
and the right environment.
Yeah, because it's not just us, right? So you can pick someone and have a really awful relationship with that person because you've chosen to ignore all the red flags and for whatever reason, and we could unpack that. It would take a long time. But, you do that, and you do that on your own back for yourself, and then you ended up in this terrible relationship. But when it comes to your kids, they don't choose that. Like they don't want to hang out with that person.
Yeah.
They've chosen that path particularly. So,
and I think it took her so much time and effort. So she almost died, and that's the reason why she left my dad. So it was a very drastic kind of occurrence that kind of clashed all together, and she was like, right, that's it, I have to leave, because she would try to leave and go back and all that kind of stuff. And my dad had a lot of challenges he hadn't unpacked and worked through and stuff, which he did much later in life, and we had a beautiful friendship for 18 years before he passed. So I'm very grateful for that. But I could definitely see how unsafe home could become, and she just didn't. I'm sure she dated. I mean, she was only 28 when they split.
Wow.
So she was very young. So I'm sure she dated. We just didn't know about it, and it just never came around us. And I can see. I'm very grateful to her, because my sister's very much a people pleaser. So if anything was to kind of ever happen in that environment, and if my sister was very young, I don't know that she would have had the assertiveness or the skill set to protect herself in that situation. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just don't know. And it's very hard for kids to say that stuff. Lots of people who are offended against as children generally don't speak up. If it's like 25 years or something is the average of the first time they tell anyone, so it's like a long, long time,
Yeah.
usually. So, I mean,
Shelley,
hopefully that's changing. Yeah.
our time goes so quick. We could be here
Yeah.
for hours, and I'm going to ask you a big question. And I realize we could be here for hours talking about this in itself. Okay, but to bring it back to Magnus and what you do today,
Yeah.
there's always been a lot of change in the NDIS system. Maybe none more so than now in the past sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
If you were starting again today,
Mm.
what are some key principles or structures? What are some basic things you'd like to see done really well again if we were starting today?
Do you mean if we started, the government went, okay, we're going to build the NDIS from the ground up, and
Yep.
we're going to do it? Yeah. Oh, okay.
No pressure.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of inefficiency in the actual NDIS itself, and so how the government has built that model it's really difficult to interact with. It's really difficult to understand what the rules are. It's really hard to get people on and off it, get their plan the way they need it. You get different answers all the time. So if they could have built a business that was a bit more like how you would build a private enterprise, where you would make sure that everything was working how it needed to work, and we understood what the parameters were. Because I feel like at the beginning they just went, oh, look, we don't know if we're going to have enough providers, and we don't know how we're going to get. So we're just going to just do this open slather of providers and participants, and everyone just kind of jumped on for however that worked out. And now we're trying to figure out who is it for was one of the questions, and then how is it run. And I think that what we're currently seeing is all this point towards fraudulent providers, which I don't believe that that's even anywhere near the majority of the problem. I think it's smoke and mirrors in a lot of ways, saying this is the way we get Australian people invested in this, and we talk about all of this stuff, and that seems to be a lot of what the conversation is. But there's a lot more to it in regards to the structure and how the NDIS is actually run. So just be able to build that better, and that would have helped everybody then when they figure out how who is it for, how do they get on to the NDIS, what is their actual job.
I agree. It
That's
would
my
have
short
been
answer.
so much better.
Yeah. There's lots going on in that space. Really, it's super hard. I like, my own personal belief is there is enough money. There is enough money. It's a priority thing. So it's whether you want to prioritize supporting people with disabilities and mental health, and whether you want to use your money for that purpose, or whether you want to use your money for other purposes. And they have a certain pool of money, and they could just be using it for NDIS participants, but they're choosing to say that it's too expensive. Whereas I would say, so much of that money comes back into the community and is so awesome for the community in so many different ways, the disability community and the regular community, like small business, staffing. There's so much. When you think about us as a provider, how much money, say, comes into us, and then how much money actually gets dispersed out into the community, and then how much money is paid in tax. Nobody's kind of going, we paid this much money, but this percentage of it has come back to the government in tax, right? Because we pay so much tax, staff pay so much tax. No one's, I haven't seen those particular sums really. So it's not really costing as much as they're saying. It's very bloody annoying.
We pay two types of taxes. So you've got the goods and services or whatever's coming in that way, and then plus you've got the PAYG tax that goes back to them. That's not accounted for.
Yeah, and look, so for us, right, we've also bought 8 houses. So And we've also then housed people with disability in those houses for very reasonable, I would say, cheap rent. So, there's just so much to it that's not just this is what it's costing. Yeah.
Shelley,
And
we're nearing towards the end. Oh, you go, Lily. You go.
Oh, sorry, Kiwi. Like when I think with Liam, I just think, what's the cost of quality? If you've got people that are there to make sure the supports are received, and then that person has a great quality of life and becomes a contributing member of society, is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's right. And if we're any kind of, I don't know, decent human being community in this country, why wouldn't we prioritize people having a good life, whoever those people are?
Yeah.
That to me, is worth the money rather than, I don't know, other things like buying submarines in.
Oh, don't get me started, Shelley. Don't open that door.
So many other ways we spend our money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let me get my political hat on. Anyways, Shelley, we've come to pretty much the end. It's and again, I only sort of scratched the surface, and it's always, we're so lucky here that we get to speak to so many people who have people at the center of what they do, which is why I think we could talk all day about it. So, yeah, kudos to you, and hats off for the incredible business you've built and the thousands of people that you've helped. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. Thanks so much. This is actually really fun.
It is. And I just can't wait to keep watching all the amazing things you're doing. I think I saw a potential book on the horizon as we wrap up.
Yeah. So I'm actually doing keynote speaking. That's, because I've got to keep busy because now we have a CEO. I've been walking around in a circle in my house. So just based on all of my experience, I've got a keynote. It's called Lessons from the Hardest Rooms, Hope is a Skill. And it's about the psychology of hope and how we get it and how we keep it. Because it's not just a feeling, it's something you can actually get and maintain for yourself and other people. So, and how that leads to good life and good performance. So that's my keynote. But the book is like a fake book cover. It's, I don't know, maybe I'm just manifesting.
Manifesting.
I feel like if you make a fake book cover, using Chat GPT, then maybe it'll happen at some point, So
absolutely. And how do we register to come and watch you for your keynote?
So I'm delivering that on the 9th of the 10th. So the 9th of October. It's on the Gold Coast. We've had to move the venue because there's a lot of people that want to come. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So I'll have tickets on my Insta, my Facebook, and I'll put the link there as soon as we know where we're going. Yeah.
Send it through. That'll be awesome.
Send it through because we want to be there.
Okay. That'd be so cool.
100%. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really hope we get an opportunity to have you back at some point because I really, really enjoyed this one today.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
Yeah.